welcome to Defying the Odds. I'm your host, Higgy. Defying the Odds is a live feed testimonial series of people that have decided to step out of the shadows to share their message of hope and inspiration. This is my attempt to create a ripple effect of positivity, hope, and inspiration throughout the recovery community and in all areas. Whoever might see this, I hope you hear something that touches you, something that you relate to, something that you can use as a tool. The Defying the Odds is powered by my nonprofit, No More Heroin, 501c3. I want to check and see if the stars are available on the live feed. There's a message on here. I don't know how this works yet, but any funds, any revenue that I create through live streaming, podcasting, the YouTube channel is going to go directly to No More Heroin. That way I can start moving forward and have some money to help folks out there. I'm trying to create sober living scholarships, be able to help with hygiene and personal effects of that nature in my area in central Indiana. This episode is sponsored by Grace Recovery and Wellness in Anderson, Indiana. They are my employers, and they have graciously given me a studio space to build and grow and build my platform. And I'm very, very grateful. So if you need help, look for direction and guidance, please look up Grace Recovery and Wellness. We have sober living attached as well. That's the Grace House. It's male and female. And that having said that, I'd like to welcome everyone again. We are streaming live on Facebook to my pages and simultaneously streaming to Defying the Odds with Higgy on YouTube. If you would please subscribe to that channel as well. I'll be adding content as we grow and build and try to create that ripple effect. Right? I want to give people hope and inspiration and encouragement. Tonight is episode 3. Defying the Odds with Daniel Ritchie. Daniel has an amazing testimony. I've gotten to know him really well over the last year. I was seeing him on social media prior to that, but I've gotten to know him personally. He is a former MMA champ, a bodybuilding participant and contestant. He's participated in bodybuilding. He is a health and fitness guru as well. He's a survivor of the drug and criminal lifestyle, incarceration, mental illness, all the things that the package deal of addiction is all about. And he is now an advocate and recovery professional as well. I believe he has 7 years clean and sober today. From Cincinnati, Ohio, I want to welcome Daniel Ritchie. How are you, brother?
I'm doing well, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well as also. Hey, everyone, if you're catching us live, that live button will be right there. Drop a hashtag live. Please let us know where you're watching from. I need to slow down. I'm stuttering. If that button is not there, it means you're catching a replay. Please drop a hashtag replay. And again, please let us know where you're watching from. Thank you for being here, Daniel. So I was thinking today how gloomy and dismal the Midwest is this time of year. And I struggle with seasonal depression. That's one of the reasons I remained in South Florida as long as I did. Is that a thing for you as well?
I don't know. I think I just get more tired. I don't know if I get more depressed. I would say I get a little bit more stressed because it's a lot of like what we do in the advocacy work. It's a lot more life and death in the wintertime, right? It's like, oh man, the next week it's going to be 10 degrees outside. Like
I got to find somewhere to get in.
Exactly. Like, so people, and some people are like, oh, they only have a place to go when it's cold. Well, whatever it takes.
Whatever, right? By any means necessary, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I had a guy contact me the other day, man, and this man would not have called me if it wasn't pouring down rain and cold outside. Like, to me, that's a God thing. Like, God would say, all right, brother, it's time for me to get up out of these streets,
So you have been in the fitness industry as an athlete, as an instructor, as a mentor. How could folks out there that are like me with seasonal depression, how can fitness, nutrition, and things of that nature help with our state of mind and help our brain chemistry in this time of year.
Yeah, I mean, exercise in general releases endorphins, right? Especially when we're low on those personally, like post addiction, in the midst of a depression, a seasonal depression, and things of that nature. Just the better you feel physically, naturally, I believe, kind of can elevate you just a few steps above where you would normally be in that depression range, right? So I think it's important to do things that are going to help you feel better physically, with the chain reaction of it causing you to feel better mentally as well. So I definitely believe it's important, especially this time of year.
And if we're in recovery, our serotonin and dopamine have been diminished, depleted. And what would you suggest for someone that is in that condition, that state of mind where their dopamine, that pleasure chemical, is missing?
Yeah, I think that actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I feel like, the fitness aspect of recovery is extremely overlooked. We make a lot of things necessary for early recovery. 90 and 90, get a sponsor. But a lot of times we forget the physical aspect of recovery. We've been beating our bodies sometimes for years and years. Like, we remove the drugs, remove the alcohol, or even like someone such as myself, I began using pain medication because of the physical ailments I had from being an athlete. And it's like all of a sudden those things are still there. On top of us doing damage to our endorphins, exercise has been known to help reactivate those and elevate those in normal people, let alone people like us, where it's detrimental to our recovery to begin to feel better.
Absolutely. Thank you for that insight. So are you originally from Cincinnati, or are you from somewhere else?
I was born in Rochester, New York. That's where my dad is from. My mother was born and raised here in Cincinnati. So when I was born, they happened to be in Rochester, New York. I was a handful apparently as a baby. I've read some letters my mom surprisingly,
No.
I'm like, what is she saying about me? Yeah, but anyway, it was comical at this point. But so we moved to Cincinnati when I was young. So I was born out of state, but I was raised here, and I've been in Cincinnati my whole life.
Okay, take us on a journey down memory lane. What was it like for you growing up? How did you get into sports that led you into the fighting industry as well?
Yeah, so man, as long as I can remember, I always had this fascination with boxing. It was I used to check out books when I was a kid, like old school bare knuckle boxers, and those guys, I used to just be so fascinated, and I was like, I want to do that. Like, there was something about this combat, and I was a very athletic kid, but I was very what's the word I'm looking for? Hands-on. I liked to wrestle. If we had an argument, I was probably putting my hands on you at a young age, which I'm not saying is acceptable.
You were aggressive.
Very aggressive. My parents, actually, it's funny, they got me this stuffed clown when I was a kid that was as big as I was, and I would sit in the living room and beat this stuffed clown, like dents in it, like just destroy it. But to me, it wasn't like getting out of aggression. It was fun. Being from the Midwest, sports are a huge part of the Midwest, which we know. And so, I was playing baseball, soccer, kind of just finding my groove. I really enjoyed baseball. It was like a part of life. Like, every kid did it. Every kid in my neighborhood. You were very competitive
too, weren't you?
Very much so.
Oh, where did you go, Daniel? Hope his phone didn't die. Everyone, let me know where you're watching from, where you're tuning in from. Drop some recovery dates as well. Let's show other people out there that this recovery thing does work, all right? Let me see. There's Dan.
Okay, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I thought maybe your phone died. Are you getting calls?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
No.
No. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I can't hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I can't hear you guys.
It's just me anyways.
Of course, somebody calls me and screws up my
Reconnect your Bluetooth. Disconnect and reconnect. Technical difficulties here in the Defying the Oddz laboratory. We'll be right back after this message from our sponsors.
I don't know what happened. I'm gonna have to log back in and log back in.
Okay,
Okay.
that's fine. So, hi everybody. It's good to be back doing my broadcast. I have some amazing guests coming up in the future. Through this journey of recovery, I've met and become friends with a lot of amazing, inspirational people, and they're willing to come on, share their message of hope. Some of them have their own platforms as well, and I'm hoping that people will come on and watch these broadcasts and get to know each other in the comments. Get to know what other platforms are out there, because we are so much stronger. We are so much stronger together than we are divided. And for me, recovery is not a competition. It's not a way for me to look good. I've had plenty of attention in my life. I not require that in my life today. I want to help the next person behind me struggling, because I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for people like Daniel that give me hope and inspiration when I was trying to get myself together and just going through detox for like the 670th time. People that will encourage you, tell you the truth about yourself, whether it hurts your feelings or hurts them. The total honesty and the camaraderie and fellowship that comes from that is such a valuable part of recovery, because we feel like we're so alone for so long. So I was just like filling some dead air time. Can you hear me okay?
I can. I don't know what happened. I got a call. My phone rings quite often, but I hit ignore it, and then it was like I lost all.
You muted everything.
Yeah. It didn't matter what I was doing. So.
Well, you're back.
I'm back.
So let's get back to the journey, through high school and your competitive nature.
Yeah, I remember what it was. So swimming was also a big part of was a big hobby of mine as a kid. We had a pool up in the neighborhood. Everybody joined it. Everybody was there. Swimming was I really enjoyed swimming, and I excelled at it. I actually got my first scholarship when I was about 7 to a team called the Cincinnati Marlins, which was like the elite Cincinnati swim team. So, but I also started boxing as a kid. There was a guy in the neighborhood, older gentleman, who really saw something in me, and he was teaching me kind of private and stuff like that. And it was maybe it was a past life or something. I don't know, but that was one of the things that I was like, it was built in me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So you're one of these aggressive, competitive youngsters. How did you transition to the MMA aspect? I mean, that seems like it's such an extreme sport. I always think you got to like getting hit in the face.
Yeah.
Or hitting people in the face.
Yeah. There's something. It was more of how do I not get hit in the face? How do I hit this guy? Like the strategic aspect of it was a big part for me. So I really love strategy, war strategy, things like that. I've always had this thing about, for the love of God, about strategies, war strategies, sports strategies, things like that. But So like, I actually got into drugs originally around 13 years old. I don't know what it was, but there was something that was very appealing to me about the streets. Um, I never felt like I belonged. There's some mental illness that runs in my family. 30 years ago, as we all know, like mental illness and things were not approached the same way. Things were not diagnosed the same way. They weren't looking for the same signs. It was either ADD, ADHD, and you were a bad kid. Like, it was like there was no gray area, like where they were exploring other ways. Like I excelled at sports, but I struggled at school. Well, where was the correlation that they could have mixed, right? But they didn't back then. So I kind of gravitated towards the streets. My mother, God rest her soul, decided, and this is just a big part of my story. Like she read a book when I was a kid. It was like called Tough Love. And, the word tough love really bothers me because the tough love that I received was not, to me, it wasn't love. Like the way that I believe I may have needed. I may have turned out the same way. Like I don't want to use this as an excuse, but my home didn't feel as safe to me. Like I didn't feel safe to open up to my parents. I didn't feel safe opening up to adults. Wasn't a lot of that type of guidance, but I did get it from the local drug dealer. He
Absolutely.
was like, man, Daniel, you're a great kid. You're good at being like an aggressor. And I wasn't a bully. Like, let's get that. I want to make sure that that's clear. I used to fight the bullies. Like I I used to stand up for the kids that couldn't stand up for themselves. That's, I think, just another trait that's in my DNA maybe. But yeah, so that was when I first started getting into drugs. It actually was marijuana.
At what age was that?
13.
13.
Yeah, I had my first felony charge, my first drug trafficking felony charge, first sting operation at 14.
Wow.
I got my first 2 felony drug trafficking charges at 14 years
That's
old.
a harsh reality check for an adolescent.
Mm-hmm. It was. And then at 15, I decided I wanted to kind of focus back on sports and school. And there was an adult that had put me in a very dangerous situation, and no other adults believed me. And I ended up getting put into an abusive group home as a result of it. And that sent me off, as we say, to the races.
Into that downward spiral, right?
Yeah. And I became a ward of the state until I was 18 years old.
Wow. It's a rough lifestyle growing up. So
Right.
At what point did your addiction spiral out of control?
So it's one of those things, like, again, like what gosh, the lack of education back then, or even just understanding, of ourselves and signs to look for. Like I was terrified of drugs and alcohol when I got released at 18 years old. I had my first fight at 18 years old. It was just a no holds barred tournament. Like the sport wasn't regulated back then. Like it was just illegal. It was just illegal.
It was a free for all.
Yeah,
Street fight.
It was. So I fought in a tournament up in Dayton, Ohio. I won my first 2 fights. I lost my third because I had no idea what I was doing. But I fell in love. I was like, that's what I want to do with my life. When I was in DYS as a kid, I had this love for exercise and working out. So I started to pursue a career as a personal trainer. A few years into my addiction, or a few years into my fight career, I finally was getting my opportunity to be a champion. Like being a champion was something like, I mean, that was things you dream of. I didn't care what level it was. Like the show at the time, there was only like 4 shows in the Midwest. It wasn't like it is now, where there's 60 different professional leagues. Or amateur shows. And
right.
I mean, there was like 4 shows. I saw a top 5 fighters in the world at a bar in Chicago. Like these are top 5 fighters in the world, 6-figure fighters fighting in a bar. That's what the sport was back then.
Right.
And it was just starting to structure. And it's a really great experience. I've been a part of that. But at about 24 years old, I got my shot at a title. I'll tell this story real quick because I think it's pretty cool. So I remember showing up to the weigh-ins, and I look at this guy standing in the corner because you didn't really know much about your opponents back then. And I'm looking around, I'm wondering who my opponent is, and I see this guy in the corner, and man, had his hood on, looked all about business, and he was all neck, like just all like looked like there's no way anyone's knocking this dude out type of look, and very intimidating. And I remember joking like, who's fighting that guy? And they were like, you are. Like,
surprise.
Yeah, and it was like, because you go through a lot of emotions prior to a fight. It's not like a street fight where it's just like, oh, no, go. It's build up. It's weeks and months of training and doubts and boosts of confidence and questioning yourself and all these emotions you go through prior to a fight.
And then you got to cut weight too, right?
On top of cutting weight, on top of sacrifice, and not going out and doing those kinds of things and going to bed earlier, getting to the gym and doing things that you don't want to do, just like in our recovery. But it was, I ended up, we did the weigh-ins. He was a little bit heavier than I was, but it was fine. I took the fight. And I'm walking out, and I remember getting in the cage, hearing the cage door locked behind me, and I look for my corner for some last little bit words of wisdom, and they just go, this guy named Rich goes, bro, just try not to let this guy hit you. And I'm like, what? Now I'm like, why? Like, what do you mean? They're like, he's knocking everybody out, bro. Just, bob and weave. And I'm like, am I, and they going through those things. And we come out, and they were 100% right. This dude stuck me within a half a second. Split my eye open. I panicked. I shot in on him to do a double leg. I picked him up, and all I could think of was I have to slam this guy as hard as I can. I have to end this fight, or he's going to kill me. I'm going to die tonight. And when I went to slam him, I think I turned. To this day, I don't really know what happened, but I ended up landing kind of funny. And I remember this sharp pain going through my shoulder into my chest. And I remember just kind of being like, whoa, did I just break my neck? And I wasn't sure. I stayed on top of him the first round. I stayed kind of ground and pound, and I kept control. It was a very weird feeling. And I went back to my corner, and I'm like, guys, something's wrong. And they're like, shut up. You know what I mean? Like they don't understand the extent of the injury. Yeah, nobody did. And we come out the second round, and I go to throw a jab, and my arm completely comes out of socket. Like, boom. I mean, it like shot an extra foot.
Oh,
and I didn't feel anything at that point. My adrenaline's going, I'm not really feeling anything, but I know my arm is useless. So I kind of dance around, but then I kind of have my rhythm. And I throw a leg kick, and he doesn't block it. So I kind of fake, I throw another one, and I see his facial expression change. So I kind of fake, I throw another one hard, and he starts to back up. I kind of fake, I could hear my crowd, I could hear my corner like, throw another one. And I jumped into the air and came down with my leg onto his, and he folded. And I went to jump. He dropped his hands. I went to jump. I was going to Superman punch him. And he turned around and covered, and the ref caught me kind of in the midair and called the fight. So I won via TKO with one arm. But not only is that one of my favorite fight stories, it's that fight changed the course of my life. Like not just my fight career, but that was my first experience with opioid pain medication. Went to the hospital that night. They said I had a Bankart's fracture and a torn labrum. Basically, I broke my shoulder and one of the tendons was torn. So my shoulder was just kind of sitting there. It wasn't really in a socket. And I remember taking those pain medication it's funny, I didn't take it that night, but I took it the next day. And I remember everything that I had felt, because I didn't really mention this, but I had always dealt with depression and anxiety and self-doubt. I had a very low self-esteem. And believe it or not, like though on the outside, it was just my competitive nature drove me and the need to fit in and things like that, what drives us. And of course, you add drugs and alcohol and substances into the mix, it can help you mask that. But those pain pills did something, man. They took all of that away. They didn't help me cover it. They took it away. I was no longer depressed. My self-confidence boosted. I felt like everything that came out of my mouth was on point. And then I could train for hours. Like, I remember calling my coach and being like, dude, I'm coming back in. He's like, your shoulder's broken. And I'm like, I know that, but listen to me. I got these pills. They work magically. I can at least train. And he's like, no, you can't. And so I ended up having surgery. I was abusing the pain pills. I was so naive to what I remember going to a pharmacy, like, can you guys fill these? And they were like, this is a controlled substance, sir. You have to get it from your doctor. And I'm like, what? Just call him then. It's wrong. I don't understand what the problem is. I actually went through a withdrawal for a little bit before I won my first title. And I didn't realize that it was from the pain pills. I just thought I literally thought I had the flu. I ended up having surgery. 6 months later, I came back and won that title.
Nice.
Yeah. So
what was life like as a champion?
It was nice, man. It was fun. It was fun. I felt when I went to places, I felt confident. It was I had a lot of pride in that. I took a lot of pride in that. And
Sure.
A lot of the reason is a lot of people at that point didn't know what I had been through as a child. I didn't talk about it. If you didn't know me then you didn't know about it. You had no idea. So especially about the abuse, I didn't talk about that for a long time. And because I also had that mentality, like, I'm a man, I should be fine with this. I'm a grown man now. That was child things. Those were childish things. I don't need them. I can put them past me. I'm cool. I'm good.
You didn't deal with it. You just buried it, right?
No, yeah. And back then, it just wasn't even something that was even talked about. Like,
the reason I asked about what life was like as a champion,
Yeah.
it seems like once you get to an elevated position and you're doing really well, people want to bring you down, right? Much like life, the envy and jealousy and whatnot. And as a champ, if you don't do what they expect you to do, you end up getting booed sometimes, right?
Yeah, and actually that happened to me. I was fighting another local guy. It was my third title defense, I believe, or fourth title. Maybe it was my fifth. I got booed walking out in my own show. And it destroyed it. Like, I wasn't ready for it. Like, today I would be. I've had, some hypocrites, and we all got the internet trolls. But
look at that guy right there.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite pictures, man, for sure. Yeah. But I mean, you get the normal stuff, the girls, things like that. But I always had this doubt in the back of my mind that this was all going to end, and it was all going to end badly, and that this was all some kind of dream, and I'm not a real person, and everyone else isn't either. They're all decoys. Like, these crazy thoughts. Like, I think they believe they call it imposter syndrome. Is that
yes?
So I had the imposter syndrome, really bad. So there was, like, on the outside, I looked confident. I looked excited. People throwing parties for you, little after parties and all that stuff. Just posters of you up at the club. But to me, I was terrified. But when I took those pills, I went away.
So what was your bottom like? What depths were you at when you finally chose a different path?
So the last couple of years of my addiction, I was homeless. I had was shunned by my family, and it wasn't because they didn't love me or care anymore. It was because they didn't know how to. How do you let Daniel in your house and he doesn't steal something?
Right.
Like, how do we help somebody when all he wants is for us to do the things that he wants us to do? And then also, like, what do we do? There wasn't, 7 years ago, God, man, could you find a recovery advocate really? Not here, and
right.
So it was like, who do they turn to? It was like, people were just like, this is how he goes.
People weren't talking about addiction like that.
No, you were shunned, man.
We were, the black sheep of everything.
Right, exactly. We were
subpar citizens.
Exactly. Yeah, we were almost like animals and rats in the street. We were considered a nuisance and everything else. And
disposable.
Yeah. And I remember I was hotel hopping. I had just left detox again. And I remember this is when car fentanyl was on the scene. And I remember being in this hotel. I stuck the needle in my neck and I shot it. And I started to try to get back to the bed or somewhere. And I woke up on the floor with the paramedics around me. And there's so much to this, man. I used alone. Nobody was there. How did the paramedics get there? I'll never have that answer probably. But I remember being like waking up and feeling as though I was put into my body backwards and upside down. Like I felt like I had finally done it. Like I'd finally done some long-term damage.
Right.
And I remember I remember the paramedics. Apparently they had gotten called for me before. And they were like, bro, I remember the two paramedics looking at me and he goes, bro, you were dead. And I was like, what? He's like, you were dead, dude. Are you ready to let us take you to the hospital or what? And I was like, no. And one paramedic was like, he's not going to let you help him. You know, like, he's not going to he doesn't care.
It's a common story, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I remember getting kicked out of that hotel. I remember it's so weird. I mean, after an overdose, you feel like shit. You're kind of just like, it's like frames of photos.
Very disoriented. You're in post-acute withdrawal.
Yeah. And I remember being kicked out of the hotel, having my laundry basket of worldly possessions and getting into another hotel down the road and just broken, man. Like what happened to my life?
Right.
Like but there was something different about that moment. It was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, why? I remember screaming at God, like, God, why are you doing this to me? Like, let me die. Take me. Let me go. Please let this hell end. Or maybe I died and this is hell. I didn't know, but I wanted it over. It's a weird conundrum, and one of the things that we all understand about addiction and people who suffer from mental health issues is like, we want to die, but we don't want to die. Like we just want it to be over. We just want it to end. And I called the treatment center that I had just left, and I expected them to talk to me just like I felt like everybody else talked to me. They talked down to me. They were disappointed. They were ashamed. They just, not a positive word came out of anybody's mouth for a very long time. And I remember pouring my heart out to this lady on the phone and being on the carpet at this hotel. And she goes, baby, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And it's so crazy how little those words like are, but how big they mean. Like telling somebody who hasn't heard it's going to be okay or had a glimmer of hope in years
or any amount of compassion from anyone.
Exactly. And what she did is, there's seeds planted. We talk about when we help people, we're planting the seed of hope. We're planting these seeds. What she did was she planted the seed of compassion. She showed me that compassion existed and that its power was real. And I remember being like, okay, what do I do now? They're like, well, we're full. Like I said, car fentanyl just hit. People were beating down the doors to get into treatment. I mean, here in Cincinnati, man, people are dying left and right. These hotels, it was like every other day an ambulance is pulling up, taking a body. Like, it's
Cincinnati and Dayton was the overdose capital for a very long time.
Yeah. It was crazy, man. And I remember using with people in these hotel rooms, and it was like, who died today? Like death was a common occurrence in our community. And I never understood why it wasn't me until I got a little bit, I was sober for some time. But yeah, I hear people like, oh, I need to get into treatment now. Like I can tell you what, it took me almost 2 weeks to get into treatment. And I'm grateful for that because I needed every bit of that pain, every bit of it, every bit of that misery, every bit of that reminder I needed to see it. I needed to feel it a little longer, because when I got back there, I remember almost collapsing into detox. Like, oh my God, please just medicate me, take me back. Like, oh, please, I couldn't stand up. And I remember one of the women at this treatment center, she's actually a counselor now, but she was a tech at the time, sat with me and cried with me. Didn't just sit there with me while I cried. She cried with me. And I couldn't understand why she felt the way she did. Like, I'm a useless, life has been shell of a man that I once was. Why are you crying for me? And I know today why, because I've cried a lot. I've cried with a lot of people, you know, and yeah, that was where it started, man. I was just going to do detox. I always like to point this out, man. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to stop or not. Why? Because I couldn't imagine life without it anymore. You know, I knew what was on the other side, but I was scared of it. I was scared enough to keep using because I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to face the world without something in me, without a needle in my pocket. Like, God, I would have put food in that needle if I could. That's how much comfort I found in it.
Yeah.
It was terrifying. And I just thought maybe I can find a way to use and still function like a normal person.
You successfully, right?
Yeah, which is every addict's dream, right?
Yeah.
So, but man, you know, something along the line changed. And that's why I always think, like, all we got to do is get you in that door. All we got to do is get you in that bed. And let the magic happen. And if it's going to happen, wonderful. If it doesn't happen, call me.
Yeah, we never know when the last time is going to be the last time, right? That you actually put it down and walk away.
Right.
And a miracle could happen at any time. That's why I believe everyone deserves another opportunity. So
always.
And talking with you, I know you've been involved with some pretty cool projects.
I have. I've been very, very fortunate.
Would you elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. So the treatment center I went to, it was a 30-day residential, but it was a total of 6 months aftercare. To me, it was like, I need to complete this because I'm not completing things in life. I start and I stop. I start and I quit. That was the theme of the last 7 years of my life up to that point. So I completed aftercare and I became a peer mentor. Then I started bringing a meeting into this treatment center. Then I got a job as a bouncer because my life skills I didn't have many at that point. And, you know, you need a job. And I remember being like, man, I've made it this far. I've survived that addiction. I got to keep faith. I don't know what God is. I know there's something out there because I should not have woken up that day on the floor or those other 8 times prior to that, or when I was stabbed. Or when houses were raided that I just, you know, happened to be at the day before or something, like, or you know how it is, like you're just like, wow, I was literally, ooh, that was close, you know. I had a lot of those. And at about 1.5 years, I got this phone call from a woman at UC Medical Center, which is our biggest hospital in Cincinnati. UC, it's the college hospital. I had some really bad experiences at this hospital in addiction with stigma. And so she said, hey, we're thinking about starting a volunteer program at the hospital. Would you be interested in volunteering and coming and talking to the patients bedside who are struggling with addiction? Like, of course, the 12th step of my recovery program tells me to be of service. It doesn't tell me what service to be a part of service for. It says be of service. So it fell in the lines with the program I was working. And so I started volunteering. I went through that process. It was the pilot program at the time was so new that they didn't even tell a lot of the nursing staff who I was or what I was even doing. They would be like, hey, volunteer guy, can you go grab a wheelchair and stuff like that? Like, they didn't know I was there to walk around with a counselor, talk to patients bedside. And when I had that first interaction and I saw a guy in a bed, stone cold, telling everybody to fuck off, telling everybody to get out of my room. I know, I don't care. Stone cold. I walked into that room and I said, hey, bro, look, my name's Daniel. I'm in recovery myself. And I just want to know how I can help you. And
compassion.
And this man looked at me and his eyes welled up and he started to cry. And I knew at that moment that there was something special. There was something special happening. And that first year, volunteering 4 hours a week, me and another gentleman, got 58 people into treatment from that emergency room. Only volunteering 4 hours a week. Yeah. And you know what happened? People started to pay attention. People started to watch. They said, what are these guys doing over here? Who is that guy with the he's in shape. He's, I purposely used to would dress fancy, but not like in a suit, but would dress nice and wear very cool shoes, very nice shoes. And people would be like, who's the guy with the shoes? And I did that purposely to get attention. Right. So then they're like, what is he doing? And I elevated myself. I was very intimidated by doctors. I think that a lot of people who struggle with addiction, we sell ourselves short a little bit when we see people who never have, and we're put in those positions. We either do one or two things. We get very defensive or we shrink.
Right.
So how do I do that? If I'm going to elevate this program to the next level, I have to be a medical professional. Not just a peer support, not just a guy in recovery, a professional. So I work to legitimize what peer support is. I coined the term peer intervention because what my goal was to walk into this room with this guy. He doesn't probably know I'm coming because one of the things was I was employed by the hospital. I missed this. After 1 year, they gave me a full-time position there at the hospital as their first ever peer support specialist. I began to study and pay attention and read grants and got a part of some amazing research projects. And those research projects helped fund the work I was doing. So I was also linking people for HIV treatment. I don't have HIV, but I need to understand HIV. I need to know it. Why? Because it's a part of my community. Because the same people who are dealing with addiction or dealing with HIV or they're in danger of getting it. Mm-hmm. I need to know as much as I can about it. Same thing with hepatitis C. I was very fortunate, didn't get hepatitis C, but I need to know it as if I did. So I became very diverse. I began to study the language that these doctors spoke. I began to study their notes they left in the computer so my notes looked just as good as theirs did. I don't have a medical degree, but damn well you're going to question whether I do. You know what I'm saying?
Nice. You applied yourself. You found a passion and you started working towards it.
Absolutely. And one of the things we have
and it all started from a voluntary position, right?
Volunteer. And I was actually completely against working in the substance use industry. I was like, you know what? I don't need people to know how much of an F up I was. You know what I'm saying? All these things like that, the perception that I had in early recovery was, definitely just skewed. Like a lot of us is. It's progressive. Recovery is as progressive as addiction is. Yes. And so I like these medical professionals would talk to me like I was a doctor, man. They'd be like, it was insane. Why? Because I carried myself like one. When I walked into a room, I held my head high and I approached them as a professional. During that time, I also helped work a stigma reduction program because, man, the culture began to change in the hospital so much that leadership noticed. Like, wow, what's changed? Seeing people like us treated like humans, which isn't much to ask for, but knowing what some of us have experienced and seeing somebody who's never struggled with addiction show compassion as if they did is a magical thing to experience. And I still remember the first time I saw them hold this girl's hand and tell her it was going to be okay and that they were going to do everything they could for her before she left because her life mattered.
Right.
Like it was just, it was amazing, man. Amazing. I was like, I've done some amazing work here. So I spearheaded a stigma reduction program. They go, all right, Daniel, cool, take it and go. And I'm like, what? So it was like all this grant money. And I ended up getting approval because the hospital is very complicated. There's a lot of layers to medical care. I'll put it this way. I was part of the early intervention program. I was employed by the College of Medicine, which is a section and worked in the emergency room. So I'm like, there's like layers to this. You know what I'm saying? Like half my team worked for UC Health. I worked for the College of Medicine and ended up making a video. And I said, what's going to be impactful in this video? What can I say to people in this situation, in these hospitals that can change their perception. In order for me to understand why they feel the way they do, I have to first understand it. I have to first know about it. The problem is with stigma is a lot of people go, oh, stigma, F you, you're wrong, yada, yada. No, I said, man, I'm sorry you feel that way. What happened? And 9 times out of 10, they had their own personal experience with either somebody with addiction or a family member or something that gave them a perception that they then carried onto everybody. You know what I mean? And when I would show them that, I would then introduce myself as one of those people. Like, look, I promise you, like, they can change. How can I help that person? If they were still alive or still going through it, like, hey, look, I want you to call me about your son. Nobody has to know. You just call me and I will help. And man, I remember they were like, we were going, the Narcan distribution in the emergency room, like, increased like 100%, man. It was we were running out of Narcan. And then we started a project to start prescribing buprenorphine as a bridge from the hospital to treatment. We can't get this guy in bed for 3 days, but we'll get him some subs. You know what I mean? And get him.
Yep.
Yeah. And as long as we had a referral, and man, the magic that did as well, especially during COVID. What do you do? And then that was one of the things too, during COVID, man, I excelled. I wrote 2 papers. I've also co-authored a medical research abstract.
Look at you. So I want to rewind a little bit. So here's this rebellious, aggressive youth that got into trouble, was fighting on the streets, ended up in juvie, progressed through, with his aggression, his coping tools, addiction, fighting, transitioned into a person that is writing these research papers for this college and the medical industry as well. If that's not proof that recovery is possible and that we can be redeemed and restored, that is,
yeah. If it wasn't for recovery,
so amazing.
I never would have realized I had a passion for writing. Like, man, I love to write. And I never would have found that if it wasn't for addiction and recovery. I also have a 10th grade education.
Wow.
So, it's just said none of those things like define us. What defines us is the work we're doing today.
Right.
Right. And it's a hard perception to take, but it is a perception that
finding a purpose and passion, right?
Right.
You're just writing it.
Let it like on a wave, man, because you don't know where it's going to take you. You don't know how big it's going to be. Like, you're just ride that wave, man. There's beauty in that, and fear has 2 sides. Fear either drives you or it can stop you in your tracks.
Absolutely. Paralyze you.
Yeah. Either way, it's going to be there. So what am I going to do with it? And I remembered being a fighter and being like terrified, man. I used to have the worst doubt in the world. I think a lot of other fighters do, but I used to be in the back like, what am I doing? This is stupid. I'm going to go out there and let this guy punch me in the face. Like, He's going to kick me in the mouth. He's already kicked everybody. Like, just these thoughts, like he's going to kill me. And I won a majority of my fights with that mindset. But I always knew that fear, that all I had to do was push through it. And the other side was going to be beautiful. Right. But I have to push through it. It won't stop me. It's an imaginary door.
So we're coming up on the hour. I would like for you to plug your platforms, how people can find you, which platforms you're on, and then what you're doing with yourself today. We'll wrap it up with that.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to follow me, you can YouTube Daniel Ritchie MMA is how to find me on YouTube. I'm just now kind of driving into that a little bit more. You can find me on Facebook at Dan the Weapon, or Inspiring Recovery with Daniel Ritchie, or just search Daniel Ritchie Cincinnati, something like that. So I'm using both of my pages now to kind of accomplish my goal. Which my goal is to plant the seed of compassion, to spread hope, to give to those what was so freely given to me, and give that I did not receive.
That's powerful right there.
Yeah. Instagram, Dan the Weapon.
Dan the Weapon.
Dan Weapon. Instagram, Dan Weapon.
I got that right in the ticker
Yeah.
that's going across the screen.
So
Dan
Weapon was
IG.
Yeah, Weapon was my nickname when I used to fight. So I got that nickname after I beat that
The
guy
human
with
weapon, Daniel Ritchie.
Yeah, and me and my friends used to dabble in some pro wrestling too, like and so it was like real like Dan Weapon, like how pro wrestling is that name?
That is.
So
what about TikTok?
Oh, I do have a TikTok too. At Daniel Ritchie 1.
Awesome. So where are you at in life in your career, and where's that beautiful daughter of yours?
She is
the Harley
on her tablet. Yeah, she is the greatest gift I received in recovery. I didn't have a family when I got sober. I was 35 years old, and it wasn't because I never was going to have one. It was because I wasn't ready for one, and God gave it to me when I was ready, and I'm really grateful for that. And so I transitioned from the hospital. I wanted to be able to help people on a bigger scale. I ended up working for some treatment providers. Yep, that's my baby. That was like, she loves Dave & Buster's and Dippin' Dots.
Dippin' Dots, baby.
Yeah, that's my girl. That was right after she was born too.
It's a great picture right there.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm working for a place called Ohio Community Health, which is a treatment provider here, a PHP. We have a sober living house. We have great clinical. It's 95% of the people that work there are in recovery. Our CEO is in recovery. Our clinical director is in recovery. Our therapist is in recovery. Like, I don't even know who isn't. They just said that not everybody is. So, which is great. So I'm able to help people. I love doing advocacy work. I love the people that people count out. Those are my people. Give me that guy. Send me the guy who's gone to treatment 30 times. Send me the guy that keeps pushing back against everybody. Let me sit down with him. How many times your family gave up on you? Cool. They just ain't give up on you. They just don't know how to love you. So I'll tell you what, we're going to love you until that happens. Let me help you. Let me show you how I did it, because I was once that guy who was too far gone.
I subscribe to that philosophy as well. I use myself as an example also.
Yeah. And that's the greatest thing we have. Like, I've told almost, I'd say 98% of my story is out there in some way. Right. And I did that because although a lot of it was uncomfortable to tell, it was very freeing, for one. And for two, somebody might grasp a hold of our stories. They'll grasp a hold of the part that we don't think that they will. We'll grasp a hold of the part we carry the most shame in, because someone else is going through something similar and they can relate. And that's what I've decided to build my career on. So doing a lot of speaking. I have some really exciting things planned for 2024. Life keeps giving me opportunities that literally were at the end, like things I thought were wrong to dream of. I would be so far from it. It's happening. I've gotten through more in the last 7 years than I ever imagined I could. And I got through it because of two things. I kept faith and I didn't pick up.
Absolutely. So, if you have resources at your disposal as well, are you available by messenger if people want to reach out to you?
Yep, I'm available by messenger. If it's serious enough, I have you can call me 513-602-7438. That's my WhatsApp number. So I'll get that. You could call me if a family member's struggling, if you're struggling, if you're in Texas, if you're in Cincinnati, if wherever it is. One of the beautiful things about what me and Higgy do is we have connections everywhere. Like, if we can't help you, somebody we know can.
Absolutely.
And best believe we're going to see it through. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure to hear your story, to get eyes on you and chop it up as well. I want to thank you for being a good friend, loyal. You always pick up the phone when I call. I have health and fitness issues. I call you, you FaceTime me, you're on the stair climber or whatever. And you're just very, very kind, considerate, and compassionate. And that's everything that you want to, people to see about you. You exude that for sure. So that your demeanor speaks volumes for who you are as a man. And as a father, you give a lot of hope to other single fathers out here as well. You know, you're doing the deal, bro. You're doing the deal.
thank
You're
you.
over 7 years now, right?
Yeah.
7
Yep,
years.
over 7 years. I know. Doesn't even seem real.
We're going to be around for a long time. I hope everyone watching enjoyed this and can take away something from it as well. We just want you to trudge the road to happy destiny with us. And if you need anything, please reach out. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll be back next week for episode 4. Thank you guys for tuning in. You have a fantastic night.